And the thing that struck me, first of all, was I would be super nervous about letting my children on the balcony.
Well,
It's much lower than you'd think. Yeah.
Really?
Again, you're not allowed to step out onto it, but it's quite deep in the terms of fitting several people in behind each other. The balustrade is not that high, and we were told that they use a small box for the youngest children to be able to see over the top for the fly past. I've been going to sort of put reins on if you had a particularly lively one.
He's a football fan, he's gone to this tournament. I think he genuinely enjoys it. You see the pictures of him, he's celebrating like an actual fan. You can't fake that. The punching in the air and stuff. And when Saka scored in one of the games, I mean that's what a football fan acts like at the game. He's a prince by day, he's the head of the FA, but he was a proper fan at the moment. Way back when he was serving, there were pictures of him with a mug, and the pictures later emerged that they'd muzzed out what it actually said was Big Willie. And so when he was serving, and they did a couple of MOD pictures, and they were handouts, but about 6 months later when they released them again, they forgot to muzz it out. So yeah, that was his mug that he used for cups of tea.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of the Royal Podcast with me, Andrea.
And me, Emmy.
This is a whole new territory for us because thanks to the amazing success of the podcast,
And thanks again for listening.
we've got ourselves a brand new studio where we're going to be filming the episode as well as releasing it as a podcast.
So if you prefer listening to a podcast when you're on the go, or you like sitting and watching it on YouTube, we've got you covered.
Nothing else is changing. It'll be the same fun, royal chats and incredible guests, except now we have themed mugs.
Cheers! Right, without further ado, let's forget about the cameras and do what we do best, which is have a good old royal chinwag. So fill me in, Andrea, what has been going on recently?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the Prince of Wales, who sadly missed out on heading to Germany to watch England, but that was all for a very important reason, which we'll get onto later.
Oh, what a match to have missed. Did you hear the news, by the way, Andrea?
Of course I did.
It's coming home.
All I can say is good luck. You'll definitely need it.
No, Andrea is Spanish, so I think we go back to the royal chat where we're safe.
Yes, definitely. Now, Prince William is marking the first year of Homewards, the Royal Foundation's 5-year programme which aims to prove that it's possible to end homelessness.
He's also competing in his annual Royal Charity Polo Cup at Windsor Great Park, which is expected to generate £1 million.
Now, we can't talk about sport and not mention Wimbledon.
Yes, this week has had a brilliant royal turnout, and at this moment in time, it hasn't been confirmed whether the Princess of Wales will be making an appearance, so we're keeping our fingers crossed.
Yes, we'll be talking about all this with our guest, the Sun's royal editor, Matt Wilkinson, who's had some first-hand experience with this year's Euros.
But first, let's welcome for her Right Royal Podcast film debut, our star striker, hello's royal editor, Emily Nash.
Welcome.
Hello. Fancy seeing you two in here.
Fancy seeing you. Have you been there this whole time?
I have. I mean, what took you so long?
Now, Emily, the last time we spoke, you had an incredible tour of Balmoral, and this week you've gone to another residence.
Oh, another royal residence we weren't invited to. Great.
Next year.
Next year.
Tell
Next year's
us-
our year.
Tell us all about it.
I did the first ever tour of the East Wing of Buckingham Palace. This is open to tourists from the 15th of July for the first time ever. And the crucial thing is that you get to see what is behind the very famous net curtains at the front of the palace. So you go into the centre room. It's where the royals gather before their big balcony moments. They go there for weddings, coronations, jubilees. Everyone's seen those pictures, right? But now you can go and stand in the room where it all happens just before they come outside. And it was pretty fascinating. I've been in there before, but I hadn't had a guided tour. And this is the first time that visitors paying for tickets for the summer opening have the opportunity to add this on. Have to say, the tour is already sold out.
Oh, how much is it? Like, can I ask?
Yeah, it's £75, so it's not cheap, but that also includes all the staterooms that you would get on a standard ticket. And of course, the cafe, the shop, and a chance to see, and I know you'll enjoy this, Jonathan Yeo's portrait of the king. I feel like we mention this in every
I'd love
episode.
to see
Our
that.
favourite now, royal
Yeah,
portrait,
well, you guys
obviously.
interviewed Jonathan when I was away, which I'm always going to be a bit bitter about because I love that portrait. But was it? How was seeing it?
It's amazing, actually. It was really nice to see it in real life.
Yeah, up close.
It's huge. If you're my height, your eye is level with his hands, which is a little bit disconcerting. But when you stand back a bit, and it's in the ballroom, so it's in this fantastic location right there, taking up a lot of space, and is going to be seen by thousands and thousands of people this summer.
I've never really thought about the size of it. It's larger than life then? It's
very much so, yeah.
Right.
I mean, don't ask me for the dimensions. Didn't have my tape measure.
I thought it was 8 feet, like 8 feet.
Well, someone I'm sure can fact check and write into the blame when we get it wrong.
Going back to the tour though, I need to know, when you walk into that room, is it an empty room? Is it furniture? Like, does it have furniture? What's it like?
It's very bling, in short. So what you need to know about the East Wing is that it was built by Queen Victoria because she kept having children. Quite frankly, her and Albert decided that Buckingham House, as it then was, with one main part and 2 wings, wasn't quite enough for them. So they built this East Wing, and they needed to furnish it. They went down to Brighton, where George IV had his quite opulent summer house, the Royal Pavilion. They stripped everything out of there and brought it back on something like 143 artillery carts.
Oh my God.
Which you can imagine, in the days before cars and removals vans was quite a job. And especially when you see what they brought, because these are amazing pieces of art, Chinese, Japanese porcelain, lacquered cabinets, amazing light fittings, and then portraits. There are incredible portraits of all sorts of people, from Cardinal Richelieu and Catherine the Great of Russia, right through to the current king's ancestors. So there's a lot to take in. So that's the principal corridor. You walk into the centre room at the end of the visit, and it's really special because you have this really lavish decor, but what everyone wants to do, of course, is look out at the balcony, and you get a sense of what it must be like being the royals, going there, having a little moment to relax after Trooping the Colour, for example, and then stepping out. And the thing that struck me, first of all, was I would be super nervous about letting my children on the balcony.
Well,
It's much lower than you'd think, yeah.
Really?
Again, you're not allowed to step out onto it, but it's quite deep in the terms of, fitting several people in behind each other. But the balustrade is not that high. And we were told that they use a small box for the youngest children to be able to see over the top for the fly past. But I have to say,
oh gosh,
I would be inclined to sort of put reins on if you had a particularly lively one.
Louis.
Mentioning no princes.
No, you didn't specify.
So, look, it's a really fascinating way of getting a glimpse. You don't see the TV. They normally have a TV in the corner for to watch the crowds coming down the Mall, because obviously you'd think they'd be able to have a really good view of it, but the Queen Victoria Memorial is pretty huge, and that's blocking out quite a lot of the view. So, yeah, I mean, if you've never been to the Palace before, but even if you have done the tour before, it's a great add-on. And it's all part of King Charles's move to open up the royal residences more, get more people through the doors.
I understand that, but then with that in mind, why isn't he letting people out onto the balcony?
It was dangerous.
Everyone wants that moment.
It's
not dangerous for the royals.
No, but it sounds like it's dangerous.
Well, if the royals can do it, then we the people.
Yeah, I wouldn't risk it.
Did you find out why, or is it an optics thing?
I think that practically it wouldn't be a very good idea, but also you need to keep something special.
Really? Yeah, I agree.
But I would love that moment. I'd love that moment for you, So do a little royal wave there on the balcony.
I've been practicing, it'll come one day. But, yeah, I mean, what else is there to say about it? The tour is, it's interesting. If you're interested in art and antiquities, it's fabulous. And if you just want to have a nose around the palace.
How long would it take you to go to that room? Because I know, when the royals go in and then they appear in the balcony, normally there's like a 15-minute
thing there? Around half an hour, and because there's another royal salute when they arrive, this is after Trooping the Colour. They go upstairs, there's a staircase that leads directly to it, but also it's kind of connected to members of the royal family's working apartments in the palace as well. So it's quite an easy journey
access
for them. And I think certainly in years gone past, there'd be a table with, whatever royals eat before balcony appearances, like a few sausage rolls,
they
bollards.
do have.
Yeah, exactly.
So Tesco spread.
That, something to drink, I would have thought, let a bit of steam off.
Sure, right.
Can I ask, of all the tours that you've done, because you've been at Buckingham Palace for many, many things, including, briefings, what is the most surprising room for you?
Well, that's a really good question. Look, for me, I always find it really interesting to see the bits that aren't on the visitor's route. And by that, I mean when you walk through, particularly to go to a briefing or whatever, you kind of go in through the bowels of the building. So you see a little bit, the staff canteen and the corridors, and you realise it's a proper place of work for people. And especially at the moment, because this 10-year resurfacing programme is ongoing, there's scaffolding covering a lot of the palace. And actually, something else that's really interesting, if you go to Hello's website, for example, you can see the pictures of these rooms, which now look magnificent, but every single floorboard in them was lifted during this resurfacing. So they've had all the heating, the wiring replaced. It hadn't been touched since the 1950s. And in fact, there's some wallpaper in the yellow drawing room, which they took off, cleaned and conserved and replaced over a 2-year period.
Oh, my. That's
so
insane.
I mean, it is absolutely painstaking work, but it's about preserving this heritage for future generations.
And how much is it again? The refurb?
10 years.
I knew you'd ask me this, so I will be checking. But it's around 300 million. But it's over a 10-year period.
How far are we in that 10-year period? Because I feel like
7 years.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
It sounds like 7
years in.
Okay.
It's been a long, long old slog. But this is also about making it, future-proof as a building, as a sort of national institution.
No wonder Charles has opened up some doors for some ticket sales then.
Yeah, absolutely.
They also said this was one of the reasons why, he and Camilla weren't going to move into Buckingham Palace, but really, they'll probably
No one
always
wants to
stay
live
at
there.
Clarence House, won't they?
The Queen didn't want to live there. I've seen The Crown. Like, isn't it just like really drafty and like it's just no one's favourite place to stay?
Look, I think because it's where the institution operates from, it's a bit like sleeping in the office, I guess, for them. That being said, they have this fabulous garden. They do have wonderful private apartments. There's a pool there. I think that, it's a very nice place to live if you're in one of those parts of the palace. But obviously, it's a working place. There are a lot of staff housed there. You've obviously got the soldiers out on the forecourt. People want to get away from that from time to time.
Do you think, Charles did surprise us by opening up, this incredible room, that in the future we could see inside the private apartments? I mean, we have been let in Balmoral.
That's a really good question. I don't think it will happen during the King's lifetime. I can't see him opening up his own personal apartments at all. But I think in the future, why not potentially share some of, perhaps the late Queen's personal spaces? I think it's too soon at the moment, but, possibly there's some talk about Balmoral becoming more of a museum in future.
I have another question about the East Wing, full of bling. Is that where, Harry and Meghan had their wedding photos and the christening photos? Is that section?
No, that's Windsor Castle.
Oh,
but it is.
Yeah, that's completely wrong.
Yeah, but that's a good question. It's where William and Kate, obviously, they appeared on the balcony. Charles and Diana at their wedding. Whenever you have this big extended family shot on the balcony, they've walked through this room. And interestingly, you'll remember we had our friend Chris Jackson on the podcast previously, took great images of the King and Queen on Coronation Day from behind in the centre room. And what's interesting about that, if you watched the BBC documentary about the King's coronation year, that room at the time was still a building site. So they had dust sheets, they had something down covering the floor. And the King and Queen had to
really
make their way through that with all their garb on.
Yeah,
and head out for that moment. So really you're seeing it restored now to its former glory.
Interesting, the reality behind the splendour.
Instagram versus reality.
Yeah, literally.
Even for the royals.
Now, I could talk about Buckingham Palace for hours, but shall we bring in our next guest?
Yes, let's do that. It's Matt Wilkinson. He's royal editor of The Sun, and I'm delighted that you're joining us today, Matt. Thank you for coming on a Right Royal podcast.
Welcome.
Thank you. I wouldn't miss it. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. And it's a big ask after last night as well. I imagine you celebrated England's victory a little bit.
Well, a little bit of a fuzzy head, but it's better to be, happy from the result rather than have a fuzzy head because you were sad because we lost. So yeah, I'm happy, but a bit fuzzy. Yeah.
Celebrating, not commiserating.
And Emmy's feeling almost okay as well.
Oh, we almost got there without this coming up. Yeah, no, I also enjoyed the match last night with copious wine. So I've had a Lucozade Sport. I've had a sausage sandwich. I'm feeling good. But yeah, what a result! I think it's coming home.
Well, yeah, you can do it all again on Sunday.
Yeah, well, exactly. But ignore Andrea over here because she's Team Spain. But we don't talk about that.
No,
for the sake of friendship.
Just enjoy the victory until Sunday.
Well, I've actually got money on Spain winning at the start of the tournament, so I win both ways.
Okay, that's good.
That was genius.
We'll leave it at
Smart.
that.
You'll be happy either way, then, kind of.
Kind of, yeah.
Would you rather lose your money and have England win?
No. I'd rather England win. Yeah. I'd rather. Just to make clear on that, I would rather England win than win £50. Yes.
Anyway. Oh, just £50. No.
Exactly.
Yeah, what's that? Anyway, we digress.
You have some first-hand experience because you were out at the Euros in the last few weeks. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like? But also, obviously, the most famous face in the stands has been the Prince of Wales. Yeah,
so I was at a couple of the group games. It's incredible out there. It's one of the best countries to go watch football, quite frankly. And William was there. William was at the Denmark game that I was at, and he was a bit posher seats than I was in. But look, he's a football fan. You know, he's gone to this tournament. I think he genuinely enjoys it. You see the pictures of him. He's celebrating like an actual fan. You can't fake that.
Yeah.
The punching the air and stuff. I think when Saka scored in one of the games, I mean that's what a football fan acts like at a game. You know, he's a prince by day. He's the head of the FA, but he was a proper fan at the moment. So
I feel like we're really seeing him let loose a bit recently. You know, we had obviously the big Taylor Swift moment.
Yeah, he had better seats than me on that night as well.
I feel like there's a pattern emerging here, but you felt like you saw every emotion on his face. It's refreshing, isn't it, to have? I mean, obviously the Royals do get involved in sport a lot, but for someone in his role in particular, it's quite fun to watch. Yeah,
it is, but he's always been quite fun. You know, he's always kind of been up for a laugh, hasn't he? When we've worked with him or seen him on jobs and stuff like that, he always throws himself into the engagement. If there's something he has to do that's fun on a job, he'll do it. But my thought is that he's appearing more relaxed, and I don't want to talk about the Princess of Wales, but he looks more happier because I think maybe the Princess of Wales or the home life is a little bit more comfortable at the moment, you know, and I don't think he would have really gone to Taylor Swift, done a dad dance, followed England away in Denmark, you know, if Princess of Wales wasn't improving as she is. So I think he's a lot more relaxed and he's able to go and enjoy himself.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a real change, isn't it, from earlier in the year when he all but sort of disappeared for a few weeks. So that is great to see.
Can we talk about the statement? Because it was very short, and I want to talk about King Charles because I've never had King Charles as quite the...
Sorry, what statement are you referring?
Well, they released the statement straight after the end of the match, and King Charles was quite unique. You know, he said... I mean, Emily, you probably know word by word what he said, but basically that he didn't want any last-minute goals or he didn't want any penalties.
He's basically appealing for no drama, isn't he? And I think he says for the collective heart rates of the nation. I mean, maybe he's shouting out to the NHS there and giving them a bit of support at a time when they need it, but it's it suggests that he has been following very closely, and he's not known for being as passionate about football as William.
No, he's not. Apparently, he's a Burnley fan.
Yes.
You hear about that?
I
he
have
once
heard
said
about
he was
that.
at Burnley, a football ground, and they gave him a shirt, and he actually said he was a Burnley fan. They got relegated this year, I think, from the Premier League.
Well,
so I think he's a bit unhappy. But I love the idea of King Charles. I think watching the game with Camilla. I think that
would
be
because he gave her a mention
that would be the
too.
ideal episode of Gogglebox, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Oh God, can you imagine
watching the football? But look, he spoke for the nation. As I say, that statement that was put out, you know, it was very quick after the game, but it really spoke to the nation because we were very excited and happy, but also kind of exhausted having these last-minute dramas. But yeah, it's nice for him to get involved. I hope he watches the final.
Who do we think is going to be there on Sunday, apart from the new Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, who we're told will be attending?
And Ed Sheeran. He'll definitely go. He never misses one.
And Adele.
And Adele, yeah.
Well, we hope William, don't we? Yes. Well, will he bring George?
Or Charlotte, possibly all of them. I mean, it's potentially a huge historic moment, isn't it?
Well, George. George went to a lot of the games at Wembley in the last tournament, and had some great footage. There's a great video of him celebrating.
Yes.
Like genuine kind of like I think he was about 9 or 10 at the time, or 8 or whatever, sitting there in the stand celebrating. And I would love to see George celebrate our victory in the final.
Not quite in the same style that we did, though.
He'll celebrate a goal for sure, hopefully. And that is it.
Oh my God.
Andrea, do you just want to take a walk?
No, I'm good. You might have to take a walk, though, on Monday.
Oh, right. OK. Let's move on. In that case, there is a bit of a dilemma for the Royals on Sunday because we've also got the Wimbledon finals. Now, the people organising Wimbledon have not ruled out an appearance by the Princess of Wales. Obviously, we know she's taking things one day at a time. She has good days and bad days. What's your gut feeling?
Well, the interesting thing about this is because, look, we've been literally asking or trying to find out every day, do we need to be at Wimbledon? Is the Princess of Wales going to be there? And it's like good days, bad days. And people at Wimbledon don't know. And I genuinely think there's such a small circle of people with any information connected to Catherine and William that the decision might not be made until the last minute. I mean, there is a window, if you think about it. There is a window on Saturday. I mean, that's the women's final, I think, on Saturday. So there is potentially a window on Saturday. Sunday, now England have got to the final. William will be off, maybe taking one of the children or whatever. I would not expect her to go on Sunday. But because of the way the diary's suddenly fallen, all eyes are on Saturday. But I think a decision will come late.
OK, well, exciting. And it would be great, obviously, to see her again because the Waleses, as we know, tend to disappear over the summer. They'll be regrouping, taking a bit of time out together. But lovely to see her, hopefully, and if not, then William and the children cheering on England. It's an interesting one because we've got a big Olympics as well coming up this summer. And we would normally expect to see a couple of members of the royal family potentially going along. And the key person for us, of course, is Princess Anne. Now, we understand she's making good progress and is going to be back in action at the time that this podcast goes out, which is great news, isn't it? Because, I think people have been quite concerned about her.
Well, the thing is, with Van, we think she's indestructible. She's Princess Anne. People are terrified of her, or people, she doesn't take falls gladly, and she's really tough. She's really stoic.
Woman.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it was a kind of shock, but you thought, well, the poor horse, rather than poor Anne. We thought she'd be back on her feet in a couple of days. So look, they've taken. I think they've really taken it seriously. She was in there for a long time with concussion, I think close to a week. They asked us not to try and take pictures of her leaving, which is always a kind of sign that she's not in a way that she wants to be seen. But yeah, we'll see her out, and I'm quite looking forward to seeing her when she's out this week. I would imagine she goes to the Olympics. I think there's I would. If I was a betting man, like I am with England, Spain, I would put my winnings from this weekend's game on Anne going to Olympics.
That would be great to see.
She really seems like she wouldn't want a fuss, doesn't she? She very much gives that energy.
She'll probably make a joke about it.
Yeah, she'd want to come back and not have anyone mention it ever again, kind of thing.
Well, interesting, the engagement that she is coming back to involves a charity Riding for the Disabled, which is one she's supported for many years and which does incredible work and has actually produced some fantastic Paralympians over the years. So, any suggestion that this might put her off being near horses, I think is way off the mark, isn't it? Just going back to Wimbledon, we did have some good royal turnout this week, didn't we? Yeah. Queen Camilla there in the stands. Obviously, without the Princess of Wales being there as much as she might like to have been, that's quite important, isn't it, for the tournament to have someone of her stature?
Yeah, I think that was a big day, wasn't it? We had the Queen, we had Mike and Zara, we had Peter Phillips and his new girlfriend,
Yes,
Harriet.
We need to discuss this.
But yeah, I mean, look, I don't think Wimbledon is a big enough event. Yeah. It's got its stars, it's got its kind of celebrities. It's just like the kind of icing on the cake, having Queen Camilla going there, and it is a case of her, showing her support, I think, to the event.
Well, and enjoying a day out with her sister.
Yeah, of course.
It was lovely to see them.
It was a long day. I turned on the TV at 7 and she was still there with her sister. I was like, wow. Like, I bet she didn't think that this match would go on for so long.
Well, that's the thing about Wimbledon, isn't it? You can't just pop in and, be done in half an hour like you can on other royal engagements. So it is a big ask for, if the Princess does.
Well, the other thing, the
up.
Princess of Wales, this little thing called rain. I mean, are you going to send her there if the weather forecast said it's going to rain all day, when she's been having cancer treatment and stuff like that, and she's unwell? So maybe that's a thing that they factored in over the last couple of weeks, is like, well, the weather's terrible, we can't send her on Friday or Wednesday or whatever. So they'll be looking at the weather forecast, I think.
Well, Wimbledon have had to refund people £250,000 in tickets.
Are you serious?
Yeah, for games that were called off due to wet weather.
Wow.
Yes, that's something they're probably not delighted about.
It has been a terrible month of weather, hasn't it? It's
I know,
like
just
always
for
July,
all our listeners overseas, just a gentle reminder about how lovely Britain sometimes looks in, in the images. But anyone who watched Trooping the Colour, and I know you were there in person, will know from experience.
Well, I got soaked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Going back to the Tindalls at Wimbledon, can I ask, because they're never at the Royal Box, and people seem to think that they're just not invited. And what is the truth?
The truth is that Zara is an ambassador for Rolex, the watch brand, and that is why she sits in the Rolex box. It's very simple. It's something that gets wheeled out every single year, and it's effectively a non-story. But what I was fascinated by, and I know you know a fair bit about this, is Peter Phillips and his new girlfriend. You've broken a few stories about this in The Sun.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting. I mean, I like Peter. I think he's a decent fella, and he's had his up and downs of romance, like we all do. And he had a divorce. He's had 2 children. He fell for another girl, and then he's been with Harriet. And I think the first time we got some pictures of him at an event, at a question event over in Gloucestershire, and it was very much like, well, they're just kind of exploring, a relationship. These very early days, and since then they keep turning up together.
They kind of joined at the hip, right?
Yeah, I think it's a really strong sign. They went to Ascot. They've been to another equestrian event. They actually met. She was with Camilla, by the way, Queen Camilla, very early doors, where they were kind of at the same event. Ascot, Wimbledon. I think we'll see them again, possibly at the polo.
Yes.
And I've got high hopes for this.
She's very glad.
She's an NHS nurse. She's done a blog where she was partying in Ibiza. I think she's a really kind of interesting kind of addition to the extended royal family at the moment. So.
It's interesting though how quickly she has been introduced to the rest of the royal family. Though, is that unusual, or is it because Peter Phillips is, down the pecking order, as it were, that it's a little bit more acceptable than if Harry introduced his girlfriend to everyone right off the bat?
I think so. There's a lot less pressure on him, isn't there? He's not an heir or a spare. And as well has been married before, so it's not like the scrutiny is quite what it would be for others. Do you think that's fair?
I think things have gradually changed with the royal family, as you say. Like William and Harry, there would have been certain protocols with the late Queen Elizabeth II, for instance. And I think with her passing, some of the kind of more traditional aspects of that has disappeared. But yeah, I do not know if she's formally met the kind of king and queen, but we have. She was with Camilla. I don't know if she was introduced as girlfriend, but they were at the event at the same place. But we do have Balmoral summer coming up,
yes.
And that would probably more likely be the time when Peter would take Harriet and introduce him to the rest of the family in a kind of more formal setting.
So is the no ring, no bring rule going to be abolished? Is the question. I'm excited to find out.
Yeah, well, watch the space. I mean, like you say, things have relaxed a lot. I think certainly, we heard stories about Harry introducing Meghan to the Queen for the first time, and that was kind of done informally at Royal Lodge, but still sort of fairly daunting prospect. I think I get the sense that things are a little more relaxed with the younger generation.
She's still had to curtsy though. I don't know if she's mentioned it.
She's mimed it, as I remember on the show.
She's
Her elaborate
curtsy. Yeah.
Now you mentioned the polo. What's happening with the polo?
Well, William is playing in his annual Royal Charity Polo Day. I think it's sponsored by Outsourcing Inc. And they're raising money for 11 different charities. They're expected to raise £1 million this year. That's taking the total to 13 million for the last 13 years that it's been played. I think there may have been a hiatus for COVID.
1 year during COVID, I think.
That's right. Yeah. But interestingly, one of the charities benefiting this year is the Motor Neurone Disease Association. And that is one that was very famously backed by Kevin Sinfield and Rob Burrow, who very sadly died from M&D last month. And William obviously spent a bit of time with them, didn't he? He went up to Leeds Rhinos. and gave Rob an honour. And I think this will feel quite personal to him. I think a lot of the charities involved are quite personal to him and Kate. They're supported by the Royal Foundation. You've got Place to Be, which is one of Kate's patronages. So it's really nice to see that they've brought that in as well and are keeping support up for the family.
Yeah, there's some others. I think there's Mountain Rescue, which William and Catherine went and visited. I think they're benefiting this year as well. But William, have you seen William play polo?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So he's left-handed, but you play polo with your right hand. Yeah. So he is kind of handicapped when he plays, because he's imagine having to play a sport, play darts with your wrong hand, or play football with your wrong foot. So he's a good horseman, and he always wins. Every time I've been, his team always wins.
We've discussed
and
this
the Princess
before.
Catherine
Yes.
always gives him the award and a kiss. So yeah,
we're not suggesting anything untoward here, Matt.
What
So
have
does
you
he
come
actually
on,
play any
come
good?
on this podcast to suggest?
he is good
But
for
he could be
someone who's
better.
playing with his wrong hand.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? So
yeah,
he's
yeah.
an excellent horseman, but he's having to use a different hand, but he is good. But they don't understand. So.
Well, they're controversial. So I'm left-handed, right? But I play tennis and stuff with my
I've
right
heard you're
hand.
really bad at polo.
Well, yeah, no, I'm amazing at polo. So what's going on?
I think, it'd be good to see William in action, though. It's been a while. I mean, I do feel like there's probably quite a lot of pressure on him, isn't there? I mean, he's 42 now. We know that you can get all sorts of injuries once you hit your 40s. I've been told by friends.
Emily, let's not even talk about William being ill or any other members of the royal. We cannot deal with another member of the royal family
that's
being out
true.
for a long period of time. But now you're making me nervous about the polo.
It's all going to be
They
fine.
wear a helmet and everything like that, and it's all
Put him in
safe.
full body armour.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it
protect
can't get
them
any
all.
worse, apparently.
Well, he did get very close to a fire earlier this week, which looked a little bit alarming. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so he was up at RAF Valley, and this is where he served as a search and rescue pilot. And we were talking about William, launching himself into engagements. That if there's something to do to get his hands dirty, he'll go and do it. And he was in a fire truck
Yes.
during a training exercise where there was a plane on fire, not a real plane, kind of a fake plane that he had to put out with a fire hose. Apparently, he did want to aim at the watching media. I didn't hear about this. He did say, "I tried to aim at the media," but he likes getting stuck in. All hands to the pump. He was in. I think I'd say.
I love what you did there. It was special as well for him to go back there as well, because it's where he and Kate started out as newlyweds, where Prince George was a newborn. I think they probably had a lot of sleepless nights. I mean, he was working a lot of night shifts as well as a search and rescue pilot there. And I think that it's always going to be a special place for them going back up there.
Well, he met his old training boss, didn't he? And I don't know if you noticed. We've got mugs here, but I don't know if you with Raw Podcast written on. But I don't know if you noticed his mug. So his mug said HRH. Prince of Wales, and you might have been reporting at the time, but way back when he was serving, there were pictures of him with a mug, and the pictures later emerged that they'd muzzed out what it actually said was Big Willie. And so he actually, when he was serving, and they did a couple of MOD pictures, and they were handouts, but about 6 months later, when they released them again, they'd forgot to muzz it out. So yeah, that was his mug that he used for cups of tea.
So he's been
Big
upgraded.
Willie, I love
And now
that.
he's been upgraded, from 2012 when he had a mug say Big Willie, and then he was walking around with that mug saying HRH Prince of Wales, and I think that was a cheeky little ruse that was going on there with his old colleagues.
That is great
I love
intel.
that.
I think they should keep the.
The Big Willie.
I did. I just.
You know
I
what I'm
caught
saying?
myself. I knew you would say it. Oh my word.
He's 6'2" tall.
Yeah.
He's called
So no
William.
surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all. What did you think?
Nothing at all.
I'm lost.
Moving on. William was back there for the first time as Royal Honorary Air Commodore. That's kind of weird, isn't it? Because he's going back. It's the place where he served, and now he's kind of going back as the sort of boss. But I suppose that's what you have to get used to if you're the future king.
Yeah, but he'll have to do a lot of that, I assume, as he moves up the chain.
Yes, indeed. It hasn't been the main focus of his week, though. That has been the first anniversary of Homewards. And you and I had an interesting briefing about it all the other day. William has been speaking about it again today, and it's quite an ambitious aim, isn't it? He's aiming to prove that it's possible to end homelessness. That's just a mouthful to say, never mind to achieve. Do you think it's possible?
I think it's one of the most ambitious things that a member of the royal family has tried to do. I mean, this is it's not political; it's a societal issue, you know, and it's something that he's taken on from his mother. Mm-hmm. So it's something that you can't fake. Mm-hmm. He has this desire to help rough sleepers, and it's this idea of I think what was the phrase? It was to make it rare.
Brief and unrepeated.
Yeah, and unrepeated. Yeah. And he says it is possible because they've looked at studies around the world in places like Finland where these kind of things can happen. It's hugely ambitious, and I say I don't think you can kind of fake that level of his desire to make it happen. And I was fascinated in that briefing that we went to because it's not getting much coverage. People don't, for some reason, whatever readers or the press, or whatever, aren't finding it sexy, aren't finding it as exciting as him pointing a hose at a flaming aeroplane on a training course. But it's just incredibly important that I think he is an authentic voice in this area because of his experience. And we talk about the convening power of members of the royal family, they were saying that some of these people had never spoken before. So in the pilot projects, these organisations had not sat down and gone through what can we do, what are the impacts, where can we find people who are at risk. They hadn't done it before.
Not together, right?
Without William becoming, and they didn't want to be called a figurehead. Remember they said he's not a figurehead, he's a convener. And I think the idea will be when in 5 years' time, all these places will have policies or kind of coalitions where they are succeeding in finding homes or preventing rough sleeping, and then after 5 years he'll step away and just send it out into the world, and it will be for other people to kind of take up the reins.
I don't want to be cynical about this because I love Prince William and I love what he's doing with this, but is there an argument that he's a bit of a odd person to be heading this up, bearing in mind that he has, I mean, how many houses does he have? He's he
has a lot of houses.
Incredibly affluent. And so can we talk a bit about that? Like why has he decided to make this his sort of baby?
I think it's a really legitimate question. And I think if you we talked earlier about Buckingham Palace and all these other residences that the Royals
£300 million
£369 million.
£369 million renovation on Buckingham Palace. And it's could that not have gone to...
Look,
what?
I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? And I think his response to it would be, well, look, at least, I'm doing something. I think he's very aware of his privilege.
Yeah, I think it's a totally legitimate observation or possible criticism that a man who lives in palaces and castles is preaching about, ending homelessness when, in theory, the money that was spent on Buckingham Palace, you could turn it into a homeless hostel. But that's not going to solve rough sleeping. Just putting people into houses, So his aim is to, get to the root causes and to get organisations working locally to maybe have there's an officer working in a school that is kind of identifying families that might be at risk. I understand the hypocrisy, and he's put a target on his back by picking something that he can be called out on it, and I think it's a very brave move that he's done. But look, what about all us? I've got spare room. So I could put someone in my spare room. We've all got savings. We've all got money. We're all in a position where we could help people who are rough sleeping or homeless. He's actually doing something about it.
And I think one thing that came across to me that it's very much about changing people's perceptions. We met an amazing woman the other day, an advocate for Homewards, Sabrina Hatton-Cohen. Now, what was fascinating about her is that she slept rough on the streets of Newport, aged 15, for a couple of years. Just her and her dog Menace, she was telling us. She'd had to move out of her home after the death of a parent. Things got very difficult for the surviving parent. And she found herself in this really scary situation. She wasn't really able to access help because she didn't really trust the authorities. But, she started setting the big issue. She got back on her feet, and she is now a professor of behavioural science at Cardiff University and the chief officer for West Sussex Fire and Rescue. So an amazing turnaround. And she's been brought on board to help with this because it's about, making society realise that you shouldn't write people off based on the fact that they're sleeping in a doorway because they have so much potential. And I think that what William's able to do is to, bring that conversation to the fore in the way he did with the mental health stuff a few years ago.
Yeah, she was a really impressive person, wasn't she?
Really
Her story
was.
The story was incredible. And, that is the kind of perception you just imagine, a homeless person is just a beggar on the street. But this, as I say, that she came from a relatively affluent family, my understanding, and it just all, you're only a kind of few steps away from possibly being homeless. You could lose your job, you could lose your partner, something could happen in your life. In her case, it was her father, and then her mother couldn't cope. You're not too, you're only a couple of steps away from being homeless. And her story was, and she said she wanted to get rid of the stigma because she was embarrassed to tell people. Now she's an advocate and she's doing an incredible job, but she's a very impressive woman, but she was explaining that she actually took a former rough sleeper to Windsor to meet William. And I thought that was an amazing, I think that will come out in the documentary, scene where she took somebody who had turned their life around to kind of meet William at Windsor. I'm going to wonder how the kind of optics are on that. But she had a really good story to tell.
Now this project is a 5-year project and today marks 1 year. What has been the biggest development in the past year?
It's a good question because, as Matt said, he wants it to be measurable. And so far, I think they've freed up about 100 homes for people. But that is really sort of the very start of things. I think it's been about getting people around tables together and formulating plans at this stage, hasn't it? That seems to be... And they've brought some big companies on board. They've got Homebase, who've produced the starter packs for people moving into properties for the first time. Pret-a-Manger are hiring homeless people, and they have another couple of big organisations coming on board. So it's about getting everything into place at the moment. But hot off the press, we have had confirmation as well today that William is planning to build more properties on his land in Cornwall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're waiting to find exactly where, because it's already happened. Is it Nansledon?
Nansledon,
just outside Newquay. That's already happened, and he's going to, he's putting his. We're talking about whether he's he can house people, whether he's could be accused of being a hypocrite or anything, but he is actually putting his money where his mouth is, and he's actually building homes for people to live in. I mean, we did ask that question when we were in the briefing. We were like, well, what have you done? Yeah. What have you actually done? And I think we'll be sitting here in 4 years' time with much more of an idea of actual tangible kind of physical, this is what we've actually achieved. But you're right. It was about, we was very much like, we've held meetings and we've brought people together. And I think it's much building the foundations, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you think he's happy with where he's at after a year? Did you get that impression from the briefing?
I think so. I think, well, the one thing that we're always told about William is that he's a stubborn optimist. So he won't take no for an answer on things. I think that's fair, isn't it? Look at Earthshot, he's like, there's no point just wringing your hands about this. What are you actually going to do? So I think he's quite encouraged. I mean, by all accounts, he's been speaking to the Homewards team every day and sending them lots of ideas and encouragement.
But he's got to succeed because, as we mentioned about the potential criticism and stuff like that he could face, he's got to make it work.
Yeah.
He's under pressure a little bit to actually, get some results after 5 years.
Now, we've talked a lot about England. We talked a little bit about Spain. I just want to have a shout out to my home nation of Wales, where the King and Queen are this morning. They are at the Senedd, which is the National Assembly building in Cardiff, celebrating 25 years. The King's taken his new harpist. Her name is Married Pugh Evans. It's her first performance. It's quite a niche thing, having your own harpist, isn't it?
Well, he takes an artist on tours. When we go on tours, there's a royal artist, a physical painter. Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Oh, I knew about the Doctor and I knew about blood. I did not know about an artist.
It's a bit cooler than just sticking a picture on it.
Yeah. So having your own harpist is in that kind of ballpark, isn't it?
Yeah, but he's a patron of the arts, so that's his thing, isn't it? He likes supporting musicians.
I'm not being funny, but having your personal harpist just makes me think of like a medieval king, like King Henry VIII, probably had his own harpist.
Have you ever seen any of the works from the royal tours?
I've seen him doing it. There's always a different artist. It's never the same one. He'll bring a different artist that's their profession, and he will bring them, and they will paint a scene from, it's not a portrait or anything like that. They'll paint a scene from the tour, from the trip. So I've seen them sitting in the corner painting, starting to pull together a painting before, but I've not seen the finished works. Have you seen
That
the
is
finished
so random.
I'm
Sorry.
I'm sure our listeners didn't even know that either.
What does he do with them all? Does he scrapbook them? Like, where do they go?
Well,
I feel like they'll all be on display
Yeah.
at some point in the future.
I think I know this, but I think I've forgotten.
Okay, we'll come back on when you
yeah.
remember. Anytime.
We'll circle back.
Yeah, go back to the Homewards.
Where are King Charles's pictures?
This is a good question. Let's go back to the football, and we did touch on this already, but I feel like the King, as well as William, is having a bit of fun at the moment. We saw that in his message. He's had a tough 6 months. He's had a busy week. He's just appointed a new Prime Minister, the third of his reign so far. He seems to be enjoying himself. Do you think that's fair?
Well, yeah, I think with the King, he got to the coronation, and then there was still drama. There was still, the end game book and stuff like that. There was still drama happening towards the end of the year. Then I think they turned into this year full of optimism and kind of full of right, okay, everything's fine. We're moving in the right direction. And then he fell ill, and I think I think there was frustrated. I think everyone was a little bit worried. Everyone, there was when we look back at that period of history, I think, oh my God, we could lose the King so early. And I think because it's been such a stuttery start, I think that after Easter, when they said that he can start doing part-time or softly coming back to work, he's really hit the ground running. And I think it's always the case with the King. People try to hold him back. So like the Queen is often just, please slow down, look after yourself. And I think he is happier when he is out working and meeting people. I was in Scotland last week when they went to Edinburgh. He loves it. Honestly, he's just so happy going around talking to these stalls, meeting people, doing all the ceremonial stuff. He's a man who enjoys his job. And I think he was very grumpy when he was unwell, and that's why he's enjoying himself, because he likes work.
We've heard from everyone that he's just non-stop. So it's hard to get a man like that to take 5, isn't it? Like, I think Camilla's had a work cut out for her.
Well, exactly. Him and his sister, Princess Anne. I mean, I can only imagine the conversations that have been going on behind the scenes to try and keep her at home, in bed, resting up. She's going to be raring to go, isn't she?
Oh, I can't wait to see Anne. Yeah, I mean, do you know the first 6 months of the year she'd done 30% of royal engagements?
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, that's just astonishing, and she doesn't get much coverage for it. I mean, hopefully, when she returns, because she's been in the news, maybe people might want to pay a little bit more attention to her. She doesn't really covet it. She's not so. She goes to. She's gone to tours during the Platinum Jubilee. Didn't take any journalists, didn't take any photographers.
I think she likes it that way.
Wasn't bothered about it. She wasn't doing it for the exposure. She was doing it again, but like the King, just enjoys it.
Mm-hmm.
I've loved seeing Princess Anne being supported by Sir Tim Lawrence, throughout this time. And earlier this week, he stepped in for her an engagement, and they're such a cute couple.
He's had quite a moment, hasn't he? Because we don't normally hear very much from him, but he has been giving updates. He was giving updates from outside South Meads Hospital, wasn't he?
Yeah, like the loyal husband and dedicated husband he is. But I do want to know what he was carrying in the blue bag.
What do we think?
We'll never know. Maybe caviar.
Caviar. What everyone needs for their recovery, yes. Especially if you're a royal.
Matt, what are you most looking forward to in the next few weeks?
In the next few weeks, I am looking forward to seeing photographs and video of Prince William celebrating as England finally end all these years of hurt and football comes home.
One can dream.
Right, on that note, before we get into the scrap, shall we wrap things up?
Matt, thank you so much for joining us. It's been really fun to have you on, and we hope you'll come back.
Sure.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. We enjoyed it.
Well, I don't know if you noticed, guys, but I think Matt wants England to win the Euros.
Well, I'm not surprised. The whole nation does, but it's just not going to happen.
There's someone in this room who doesn't want them to win. I just feel
it's just not going to happen. But honestly, enjoy the game, enjoy it, remember it. It'll be historic anyways. It doesn't matter if they lose.
What's going to be historic is your famous last words in this room.
Well, that's everything from us today. Thank you so much to Matt and to you too for listening. We'll be back soon.
But in the meantime, catch more from Hello with our news and entertainment show, The Daily Lowdown, available on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Bye! You're the end.